Final Fantasy XIV is a great game. It's a fun game. It's currently one of my favorite games, if not up there in my top 10 favorite games of all time. Final Fantasy XIV is great. Just super, super great. Now that I started with his compliments, let me tell you one of the times I quit the game out of frustration because a ninja ninja'd my loot. Only temporarily, but still.
Look, I just got the letter on Friday, and I didn't know how to tell you.
I'm really happy for you. Okay?
Okay.
Let's go have some fun.
This story begins a couple of years ago, around the time of the Heavensward expansion. I played the game mostly casually and still do to this day. I've never been one to care about being a top tier raider or having best in slot, but I dip my toe into the scene every once in a while. For the most part, I'm more enraptured about the story more than anything else. I love RPGs, and I've made that all the more abundantly clear in all the other videos I've made up to this point. A couple of months in, one of my friends who also played the game whined about missing a mount drop from doing one of the trials. Me, being the inquisitive little dumbass I am, asked him what was wrong, to which he went into detail about how he missed the mount by a single point. For those who don't know, in Final Fantasy XIV, unless you're in a dedicated party, and you just go into a dungeon or trial blindly, all gear is decided by rolling. At this time, I didn't know all that much about the mount drops, never really bothered for one, but now I was intrigued. I asked what mount he said he missed out on, and it was a Titan Extreme one, to which I was confused. Titan Extreme at that time was a level 50 fight, and the current cap in the game was level 60. They can't be that hard to get, they're old content, I replied. You would think so, he said back. They aren't if you do it unsynced, but I'm doing them synced. Which means, even though the current level cap is 60, he was doing them at 50, which was a level cap back in the day when that content came out. It was here I made the foolhardy mistake of not backing down then and there, not prying onwards. I bet you can't get all the original mounts through just Duty Finder, to which I scoffed and laughed and said, alright, bet. And then there you see my mistake. For many longtime goers of Final Fantasy XIV, you know what I just did and how stupid it was. For anyone who doesn't know, the original trials of Final Fantasy XIV, or all the content in fact, that are trial based, has a normal version, sometimes a hard version, and then an extreme version. I had done most of the fights on their hard and normal versions, expecting extreme and savage, or also hard, to not be all that difficult. Let's just say that after a lot of wiping, I got really good at these mechanics. I got so good that some of the mechanics I could do with my eyes closed. It took an obscene amount of time and work from near the beginning of Heavenward all the way to its end, but I finally did it. I got all the normal mounts from each of the extreme fights in that game, for the original game anyway, through just Duty Finder. Some were easier than others. Garuda and Ifrit were pretty much child's play, with most of the mechanics being simple enough so that people who couldn't get the fight could be talked through it with enough work. Or you could just BS your way through it and just buff yourself enough from dying to eventually beat it. Shiva, I just enjoyed so much as a fight, I didn't mind the countless wiping over and over and over and over and over. Anyway, and that fight was the first time I actually created macros to help people organize themselves for the fight. Rama was the second hardest, getting people to position right and pick up the orbs and not pick up the orbs, not so much fun. But the naval? Titan Extreme? Oh boy. The brunt of this story revolves around that Claude. At this point, I got in a little bit wiser, but after hearing horror stories about Titan, I decided to watch a video prior which I hadn't done in any other fight up to this point. I leapt into Duty Finder expecting to do at least decently, only to swiftly be booted off the edge by a landslide. And when you die in that fight from a landslide, from getting knocked off the edge, you can't come back, you're just permanently dead. It took days worth of Duty Finders, but eventually I found a party where I got my very first clear. I remember it distinctly to this day because everyone was off the platform except for a single tank and a ninja named Ryu Hayabusa, who was obviously decked out in the proper gear, dodging the mechanics like a ninja should, to finally push through for the clear. It was amazing, but my journey for the mount continued well after that point because it didn't drop there. I did that fight over and over, sometimes getting it first try, other times we just couldn't pull through at all. Sometimes the mount would drop and I'd roll too low, but I would get it eventually. Through a sheer metric ton of BS and stress, I managed to get every single goddamn mount from the original game. I even got the special mount Corinne, which you get from having all these other mounts. But during my times doing these trials, I heard rumors of this mysterious, even rarer droppable horse, which only would drop from Garuda, Ifrit, or Titan. and its name was Nightmare. And here is where the story officially begins. So by that time, Heavensward was on its way out, with Stormblood, the next expansion, coming in a few months. My journey was technically over, but something inside me made me want to get Nightmare through the same means as the others. Self-indulged difficulty perhaps? Whatever the reason. I wanted them out the same way as I got the others. I would do roulettes, and I'd queue for other things, quested for other things, farmed up books and materials, whatever. It was a Titan run, of course. That brings us to the climax of our tale. At this point, I knew Titans backwards and forward. Every mechanic, every trick, every gimmick, all the timing, I knew them all. I could explain the fight, I could perfectly time raises so the healers didn't have to. I knew everything. We wiped a lot, however, but I'm a nice guy, so I don't mind wiping, and I can explain the mechanics. And each time we strove a little bit farther and farther, and each time during each of the fights, this ninja. It's kind of ironic, really. My very first clear of Titan was because of a pro ninja, but these failures, these wipes, were because of another. You know that one person in your life you interact with only once, but something about them keeps you in your memories forever? Maybe they said something, maybe they did something, they smelled a certain way, they did a certain thing a certain way, and that one mark remains in your life to this very day? Well, for me, that person is a ninja. A ninja named Foley Lance. Once again, I didn't mind explaining the fights, but it's considered a common courtesy for the more difficult fights of this game to watch a video before going into it. If you go in blind, that's just fine, and as long as you do your best, you're a-okay. But it gets to a point where you begin to question your very sanity. Doing poorly is one thing, but being the cause of wipe after wipe after wipe after mother humping wipe, that's another. But let's start at the beginning of all this. We summoned in, me taking notice of the new player messages that popped up and shrugging it off. I expected wipes, I don't mind them anymore, and I began with the exact same speech I give every single time I do this. Welcome to Titan EX, if you're new you're likely gonna die, but that's okay, etc, etc. Same song and dance I always give, just being honest, you know. The people in the group said nothing, to which I shrugged again. We went and we wiped before even the second phase of the fight started. People began talking up at that point, saying, yeah, I don't know the fight, first time here, mind explaining, stuff like that. And once again, I didn't mind at all. Everyone who was new spoke up, except for one player. The goddamn ninja, Foley Lance. He said nothing, and we went in again, and we wiped. But that time, I took note of his life bar. Titan has this ability where he does a line attack, and during later phases of the fight, if you get hit by it, off the stage you go, where you can't be revived. Guess who's the first or second person always off? Your first two guesses don't count. Either way, Mr. Foley would go as we all continue the fight. Each time getting closer and closer, people starting to understand the fight more and more, be spending more time watching the players shouting out commands than doing my full proper rotation. But I knew this group could do it, and even if we were just 3 DPS, we had the ability to do this. It was the home stretch. The timer was ticking down. We only had time for 2 more attempts at most, but through a lot of forcing, even to the point when we hit the final phase with only 3 of us left on stage, me having to summon a tank minion to hold aggro on the ads, through sheer force of will, we earned it. It was one of the hardest runs of Titan I had ever done, if not one of the hardest runs of extreme content I'd ever done, but we eventually made it. It felt amazing. I sat watching the screen, smiling from ear to ear as my allies complimented me on my raising, my tips, my guidance. It felt great. I was the one who clicked open the chest, as my eyes leapt from my skull as I gazed upon the loot table. It had dropped, not only the Titan pony, but Nightmare itself. I was ecstatic. I didn't say anything at first. Everyone was in agreement. None of them would roll, or the ones that did roll would click pass. They knew I had earned the right to that mount, and there it was. I clicked the need button, smiling, beaming still, as 96 rolled up on the table. The final mount would be mine. All mine. And then the Fire Nation attacks. Not kid. That ninja. That fucking ninja. Foley Lance. The ninja who was dead in the first minute of every pull of the fight. The same ninja who didn't communicate during the fight at all. The same ninja who did absolutely no damage, having less damage on his damage meters than the healers. The same ninja who did absolutely nothing to deserve the mount on his first attempt, on his first time there, who didn't watch a video, who didn't contribute anything, didn't do anything, rolled a 99. My soul, my stomach, my heart, everything dropped like a stone. I watched as he took the mount, then ran out just as silently as I ran into all of this. There were no words to describe my anger, no emotions to properly display the amounts of hate I had for him. I couldn't believe it. All that work and effort, all that for a meager 6 commendations and my prize being stolen from me. Final Fantasy XIV has this ability to search out other players through its servers, and I would check on his account just about every day. But this story comes to a culmination when I noticed he didn't level any further, stopping at level 54. Mind you, the cap for the game at the time was level 60. After about a week, he stopped playing the game altogether, and to this very day, you can go onto Mognet, check his account, and see his character still level 54 ninja, with one of the mounts he has, one of the very few mounts he has, Nightmare, just sitting there in his inventory wasting away. For a good couple of months afterwards, my anger prevented me from playing the game. I was simply too upset. But later I got over it, and I've since come back for Stormblood. I've also got Nightmare myself too. It's not even that good of a mount, it doesn't have flying, but that was never the point. This was just one of the tales of my time playing video games. The time I got ninja'd out of loot. Quite literally ninja'd out of loot. Hopefully my suffering can put a little smile on your face, give you a chuckle for the day. If not, good luck on your times playing this game or playing any MMO. And just remember, when you get ninja'd out of loot, you're not going to forget them either. Probably the exact same player, Foley Lance, in another game. Ugh.